Welcome back to the program. Right on time for our second conversation this Wednesday morning. Still keeping up with Viewpoint. We now train our focus to matters of water conservation, this coming in the wake of climate change. Right now, that is actually the conversation even as we speak. The third regional, climate justice conference is still ongoing, supposed to be ending tomorrow. And also part of that is also what will inform our conversation, even as we look at water conservation. I have created FaceTime for the same with Professor Julius Tanui, who is the CEO at Kenya Water Towers Agency. Professor, karibu sana to the program.
Thank you, Doreen.
Let's just get right into it, and just for purposes of creating context for this conversation, Professor, when you talk about water towers, what exactly are we alluding to?
Okay. Would you want me to introduce myself?
There's
okay, fine. I'm the Director General of Kenya Water Towers Agency. Kenya Water Towers Agency is a SAGA, or rather semi-autonomous government agency within the Ministry of Environment, Climate Change and Forestry, which deals, or with the mandate is to protect and conserve, rehabilitate and secure the water towers of this country. By water towers we mean the sources of our water. And we're looking into 18 water towers in this country. The big five, of course, are the ones which all of us know: Mount Kenya, Aberdares, Cherangani, Mount Elgon, and Mau Forest Complex. So those are the main water towers in our country. But of course, we have 18, we have 13 more cascaded water towers.
Making a total of 18? So
in total, we have 18 water towers. So that is the mandate of this agency. It is tasked to actually protecting and conserving. If we don't do that, we don't do that, I'm sure sooner or later, it may not take more than 10 years before you import water from Uganda or any other country which has that resource.
You can imagine.
So it is. We can reverse it if we do it now. This is the moment to do that, and it's all of us to do that as a team nationally.
I hear you. So you're saying we can reverse all this if we do it as a team. And momentarily we'll come into perhaps what is being done and what more can be done to reverse these things, because even as we talk about these things, we continue to deal with the adverse effects of climate change, so to speak. But then you've said that the key mandate is protecting, conservation and securing of water towers. You also did say that, yes, 18 in number, but we have the big five. And of course, you did enumerate them. And so then I would ask, what makes this particular big five? What characteristics do they have?
The big five, yes. I also say that 13 more. They could also be more because we are in the process of cascading more. But maybe for the benefit of those who are viewing, to understand what a water tower is, maybe there's need for us to describe or maybe explain what a water tower is, probably for the benefit of the people. What is it? Maybe that's the question you should ask me. Can I describe it? Probably because we have 47 counties in this country, and if you were to distribute the 18, we will find that some of the counties may not even have a water tower, even the way we are. But then each county may have, because water towers, I say the big five are the large ones, but we have even the smaller, which fits the description. And the definition of a water tower is an elevated geographical area.
They fit the description of what? A water tower?
A water tower. Because the 18 I've talked about, you may miss one in your county, right? You may not have, but you will have one which could fit your that description, and that is a water tower within your county. And you need to protect it, conserve it, and actually secure it. So, and the definition of that is a water tower is an elevated geographical area which allows infiltration, percolation, penetration, in areas, mountains, hills, and plateaus, which then allows the retention of water in underground, and therefore eventually releases this water to the rivers, streams, lakes, and oceans. So that is the definition. If you have that in your county, however small or big it is, that is a water tower. And you need to protect it, conserve it, secure it, and by any means necessary, protect it.
And this definitely comes from rain before it's actually released for use in whatever capacity.
Yes.
Now that you've already described for us what this is, and we also know where this water comes from for it to be described as a water tower in the first place. I want to still understand what makes this specific big five. What is so peculiar about this five?
I think it's simple. Big in terms of the size.
Okay.
Big in terms of the amount of the biodiversity and the resources they have in terms of the trees cover within that water tower, and eventually the amount of water discharged out of it, and this can be measured. And maybe, for instance, if you can use Mount Kenya or let's say Mau Forest Complex, you find that Mau, for instance, has over 13 rivers coming out of it, and others even go beyond our country, transboundary resources. For instance, Mau River, you see, and many others, of course, which discharges water to Lake Victoria. So that's why it is known as Mau Forest Complex, right? So the size and the amount of water it discharges through those elements I've said, streams, rivers, and eventually to the lake. For instance, Mau Forest Complex, most of the water goes to Lake Victoria. Mount Kenya is a very good example again. You know how big it is, and it discharges water to east, west, south, and north, right? And of course, it is a unique water tower because apart from the precipitation it receives, precipitation means the rainfall received and allowed to be stored in underground. Uniquely, and because of the climate change issues, we used to have, or rather we have ice, right, formation, because of the altitude of that particular water tower.
This is not Mount Kenya.
That is Mount Kenya. I'm giving a unique example of Mount Kenya as a water tower. But then that has changed because of the climate change. We don't see the amount of ice which we used to see so many years ago. It has diminished because of the effects of climate change. But then, of course, it is a unique water tower because it uses ice, so that the ice now changes into, it percolates and it's retained in the underground aquifers and then eventually released to the streams and rivers. So
in simple terms, you can say that for Mount Kenya as a water tower, it is because of the ice that's where we get the water. It releases water. And that's what's peculiar about it.
Yes, but it's dual because also it receives rainfall as well, right?
Yes, so it's a dual kind
of it. But it's unique in the sense that it is unique because it is actually has ice because of the altitude or actually positioning of it.
Yeah, you did talk about
altitude.
You did talk about climate change as one of the reasons why we are not seeing that ice as was or as is, but we'll come to also that in a short while. I'm telling you, there's really quite a lot to discuss as far as this is concerned, but also how significant are these water towers? Just why are they important? Because you can keep saying that we need to protect, conserve, secure, good for water, but then we don't need to sometimes and see how necessary. How significant are they?
I'll put another question to you. I don't know whether you've learned economics, but let me ask it very simple. If today you are asked to import water from Sudan or Uganda, even the water that you need to use for bathing, how expensive venture will that be?
How convenient will it be?
It will not be. So it shows how important it is to conserve and protect our water towers. These are the sources of our water. Ideally, Kenya is a water scarce country, and we look into the per capita water available for this country. You realize we are meant to, as a country, the standards are meant to be 1,000 meter cube. But we are receiving 650 meter cube. So we are shy of around 250. We are looking into a situation, if we do nothing, in another 7 years, because 7 years estimated population of this country will be 68,336,000.
In 7 years?
In 7 years. That's 2030. That means the consumption of this country will go up. If we do nothing, we're looking at per capita, water available for this country will be 250 meter cubic, 235, thereabout. It means the gap by that time will be 30%, right? So, I started by saying, ideally Kenya is a water deficit country, water scarce country. You know that. We have almost half of the country having a failed season, a drought for over 3 years, and some parts like Mandera, 4 years, right? Half of it. Another part of the country which used to rain also has so failed seasons of rainfall, and ideally we had drought in the country. As much as we say, when you define climate, you say the phenomenon comes maybe probably after 50 years, but you see this as it may not take 50 years for this cycle to come.
We're already reeling with some of these issues
because of climate change. And we see it after maybe another 10 years. How sure are we that it will take even 10 years for this cycle to come? I'm not sure myself. So there is a serious challenge that we need to conserve and protect our water sources. In our definition, water towers. Ideally, it is watersheds of the country, which each and every country needs to do. What needs to do is to protect and conserve and protect jealously.
I hear you.
You go to countries that like United States, and let me tell you this, way back in 1919, and you could Google and read somebody known as Wickes Law. Wickes Law, and that's 119, and we 109 the year that's 1911, and I was calculating the years between 1911 and now. I don't know, simple mathematics will tell you it's more than 100 years. What they did is they realized, or rather they were in a situation like the one we have, and they went out of their way to make sure that they protect and conserve their watershed. And they even went to buy more land to
just for that purpose,
to be used, or rather expand the area of the watersheds in their country.
It's that important.
Known as Wickes Law. It's that important. Others realized over 100 years ago. We are there now. If we don't do it now, I think we'll perish.
Reasons well enumerated, Professor. How important, even just dating back to the example you're giving us from as early as 1911, you know, all of us were not there. But it shows you how significant it is.
My grandfather was not even there, yes.
I mean, clearly.
Yes.
But then from where you sit, do you think this knowledge is vast to that extent, that indeed it's significant to this amount and that's why we need to protect it? Do we have that insight?
I see as a country, and that can be demonstrated very well by our leadership. The president has actually rallied all of us to pursue growing of 15 billion trees by 2032. And also growing of trees, 5 billion trees by 2027.
Yes.
That's another 5 years. We're looking at 4 years to do that, right? It tells you, as a government, we have elevated that. And for us, and you know, 5 billion trees, humongous. It's not a mean job. It's something that is huge. But we have to do it. Because if we don't do it, as I said, we'll perish. But then, of course, it tells you the government has realized that. And I think we are there, and the strategies are in place to make sure that we do that.
I hear what you say, and I'm so sure most of us are aware of what the government has said. In fact, the president has been very vocal about these issues of trees, to the extent whereby in the first national holiday we had in 12th of December, he said that even for the young people who are working in the Kazim-Tani program in the previous regime, he's mulling over redeploying them at the Kenya Forest Service so that they can work hand in hand, so that we can see how we can, you know, plant trees. The First Lady has equally been very vocal on this. So it's very good to come from our leaders. But what I'm simply asking is that, do we as common Kenyan mwananchi know the importance of this? And the reason why I ask this, Professor, is because you'd get some good number of Kenyans saying that we have been hearing the stories of planting of trees over time, even since the times of Wangari Maathai, when he was so protective of our forests. But do we understand just how important, as a Kenyan, leave alone the leadership for a moment, but as a Kenyan, why this is very significant and important for us to do this? Do we have that knowledge? That's what I want to know from you.
Yes, I think we are getting there. One is because if the head of state is talking that way, and I'm glad you also mentioned the First Lady, and I think she has demonstrated that by actually adopting a forest in Kakamega, right? And I think the other day the First Lady also was hosting a first
Members of Parliament, wives of the
members of Parliament.
Yes.
It tells you how the President and the First Lady have taken the leadership in making sure that...
birthday, that was her clarion call.
Absolutely. I think that was the birthday of the President when we rolled out the 15 billion. Yeah. And when you take it, I think to me the President has taken it personal. And when you take it something that personal, it's very close to you. And it's rallying all of us, those of us who are in the leadership in the Ministry of Forestry and Environment. We will fail in our responsibility if we don't actually rise up to the occasion. So I think who else, if not for the President and the First Lady, to take leadership? And again, we've said it has been taken it to the wives of the members of Parliament around the country. This is a good thing. I think what you're actually saying is awareness.
Yeah, exactly.
I think in terms of the level of awareness, Kenyans are very aware. And we are talking about now, we are reminding, I think because of the level of literacy again has improved in our country, and therefore people read. The era of the social media is also here with us, and each and every information is released now, and many people will have actually read it. But it is concerned, and I think people have realized, first of all, even timber for use. Buying timber is very expensive, so people have actually understood that I need to buy firewood, charcoal, all these, fuel, energy to be used for cooking and all that. And all that goes to trees. But of course, it is a dual thing. So Kenyans are aware, I can say that. I think it's not like 5-10 years ago. And climate change is real.
Kenyans are aware.
Kenyans are aware.
But sometimes you don't see the efforts,
but then, by
the level of awareness.
Yes, but we need to play more.
Yeah.
I won't mind if you call me every month to come here. I will not tire doing this.
Discuss where we are as far as this is concerned.
And see whether we are moving to the next level. Yeah. But I'm looking forward. I'm looking forward to 2032, whereby if we will have planted 15 billion trees, we'll have taken this country to a level of 30% tree cover.
How practical is that? Just look at basically how you're explaining all these issues.
Yes.
Are there strategies? Because what the President said was very good. It's a good policy framework. It is a good statement. And looking at these issues we are constantly discussing, we are dealing with. And like I said, momentarily we'll look into all of them in a short while. So very good to say. From that ministry that you represent, environment, is there a framework for how we can achieve this? Because one would ask, what is the practicability of this 15 billion?
I don't know whether you came across a country which planted 1 billion trees in one day.
Which country was this, Professor?
I want you to Google. We have a country that did that, that is Philippines, in one day. I don't know whether you also know, various strategies, various countries have used different strategies, and they say the end justifies the means. It's possible. We have an end. We need to take this country to 30% tree cover, or forest cover, by 2032. Are
we past the 10% threshold?
We are past the 10%, but we've just made it 10%.
Okay.
Yes, and I'm sure also this one. And as again I said, it is your strategy. As a ministry, we have a strategy, right? And that strategy is shared across because we have many departments and sagas within the ministry. I have a responsibility to play, and my responsibility is to plant 500,000 hectares of trees within the water towers. That is my responsibility.
That's within the department you're in.
That's within, all right? But we have a shared responsibility.
That's part of the structure.
Yes, and that is not, it's not a small area, that's a big area. But it's a responsibility that by the year 2032, my state parastatal will have actually done that. We also need...
You said for you is what, 5,000?
500,000.
500,000
hectares.
What's the time frame?
10 years.
In 10 years?
In 10 years.
Your department needs to ensure that this...
It will fit into the same 15 billion trees.
Yeah, definitely.
I've been given that responsibility.
Okay.
And I will rise up to that occasion to make sure that 500 hectares of the degraded water towers, because the area of the water towers is 3.4 million hectares. I'm only talking about the degraded one, which is actually... did I say 500,000 hectares, right? So the level of degradation of the water towers, we have 600 and over 600 plus, which represents around 20% of the water towers. I want to do, or rather my strategy, or rather within that strategy, my mandate is to make sure that the 500 hectares has been planted trees. And then out of that still, we need 150,000 hectares to be planted bamboo.
Okay.
Which is good for the riparian.
This is within your department?
That's within. So each, within the sector, everybody, Kenya Forest Service has a responsibility to play. Kenya Water Towers. Kenya Forest Service, those ones are moving day and night to make sure that they produce the seedlings.
Okay.
Right? We have other players. We have National Environment Management Authority to make sure that the swamps in this country are well protected. And what are we going to do in terms of rehabilitation of our swamps?
So for your department, just comb my knowledge a little bit now, because let's move away from the bigger picture of national government. Let's come to the way you're saying different departments, in the parastatal. What is your framework looking like for this 500,000?
Of course.
To get context of how practical what the president keeps saying over time, perhaps would be.
Water towers, what you need to take into cognition is 500,000 hectares. It's not a very small area, it's a big area. And this is within water towers. Water towers, we are talking about 18, but possibly we have more.
There could be more than 18.
We are not limited to the 18. I've said we have also 71, which fits into the description that I've given, or definition of a water tower in various counties. We have strategy, and of course we have counties in this country, and these water towers are in various counties, and we want to partner with those counties. In the process of doing that, of course, we are going to grow trees. In the process of doing that, we require a lot of seedlings, right, in that particular area. Who is going to do that? Again, don't forget that we have the hustlers, and as a ministry, we ought to create jobs known as green jobs. We can't do it alone. I mean, my work force is around 186 people. They can do that alone. So we need to rally the people, particularly the youth and women. And we're looking into creating about 270,000 green jobs in that process. And this, more than that probably, because we're looking at so many counties. Actually, we're looking at creation of around 600,000 green jobs.
For this purpose?
Yeah, these are green jobs. These are youth who are going to do the pitting, who are going to supply the seedlings and plant, and then eventually monitor the growth, and scouts who are going to do all this. Because we are not saying we want to plant trees, we are growing trees. Growing trees is from the day you plant the tree to a process whereby it is actually fully grown tree, right? Or to survival. That's actually the meaning of the growing of trees. Yeah. So two things will happen. We'll have attained the goal of meeting the requirement of the strategy of having 15 billion trees by 2032. We'll have created jobs for the youth, right? And also we'll have generated serious revenue to this country.
Yeah, because of also this job creation. And what you're saying is perhaps very good, and this coming at a time where KNBS has just released that statistics of how the number of joblessness has increased, and just saying that since 2019 that has been the trend. It has been an upward trend in terms of increase. Looking at what was last year, 2022, we're talking about 3.12 million Kenyans, youth jobless. And this, what they are trying to put into context, what the president had said in his pre-manifesto of creation of 200,000 jobs annually. Right. So when you say 270,000 green jobs, then perhaps we could be fitting into what the president did say.
Absolutely. Absolutely. We are fitting into that. Yeah.
Okay.
And don't forget about the revenue generation.
Yeah.
Right.
Again, a time when you're talking about increase of...
We used to talk about the 4 pillars. I'm sure you know those ones.
Yes, I do.
And now people were asking a question of why are we missing out in terms of being one of the pillars, and we used to talk about manufacturing, housing and health and others, and we say environment was missing. But we said environment wholesome is a central pillar, and you can and therefore it fits into, and because it's a major enabler to the others.
Okay,
yeah,
I hear you. Now there's something that you did say, that we are a water scarce country, and I just want to get to what extent, or what is the scenario of this water scarcity? How bad are we as a country?
I don't know, and there's nothing tribal about this.
Okay.
I don't know where you come from.
This one that you began with a disclaimer.
But I don't know where you come from. But where I come from used to be a country which it used to rain almost throughout the year.
Also where I come from. In fact, the Meta said these areas, and I will mention them.
That's why I say I don't know where you come from. But if you come from a place where it used to rain and used to, let me give you my history.
Yes.
I belong to an era whereby when you're going to school in the morning, you dash to the river to wash your feet and your face. Yeah. And before you finish, the water is stable and clear, and you use it as a mirror to see yourself. What am I saying? The water was clean, the turbidity was but what do you see now? You don't even see that water. The levels of the water from where I come from have gone real down. Some of the rivers have even dried up in a place which used to rain through the and we blame climate change, yes, partly, but we also blame ourselves because we've diminished the vegetation along the riparians from the sources of water where the rivers begin. We have cleared them. We have a responsibility, individual responsibility. And when you hear the president says, and actually indeed, if you were to have the 15 billion trees, we are looking into each individual, including our children, planting 300 trees per year, right? So it's not easy. Myself, I'm planting, growing 2,000 trees this season. No, this season. I need to lead by an example. So that if you plant 200, I want to assume that the other 100 goes to you. So the situation, coming back to your question, is the situation is that bad. Countries which ideally used to have water in the rivers throughout, they don't. It has diminished. So it's that serious. So what happens in the places which used to see water flowing throughout in those rivers and streams? So what about places which used to have seasonal rivers flowing? They don't see them anymore. They don't see that anymore. So it's that bad. The situation is very bad.
The situation is very bad and very dire, you say. And yes, we can talk about climate change, but also we are partly to blame.
Yes.
As you say.
Yes.
I hear you. And just as you talked about the areas where people come from, I was looking at this particular article, which the Stars cover, and just going by what the Met Department has said, that I expect more rains till May. This is what the weatherman said. Of course, this is amidst the drought and the issues of climate change we're dealing with, and we are very much aware that we've experienced the failed rain seasons, about 5 of them. But then he says that expect more rain till May. And he also did talk about the areas where, these rains perhaps will be expected till May. Areas of Western Kenya, as well. Western Kenya actually will also continue experiencing this rain even past May. But areas of coast will not be experiencing this rain. So we're looking at areas in this country, or regions in this country, whereby we'll continue experiencing rains while others won't continue. So even as we talk about the issues of climate change, and we look at it from a global perspective, from where you sit also with your experience, what would you attribute to the fact that some areas will be having rain and more rain, whilst others just almost having nothing? What will this be happening?
It's what you've said. It's right. It's clearly climate change. And when we say climate change, it is change in climate patterns. Okay. These are erratic, we can say. And again, I said so many years ago, maybe say 40 years ago, you would predict that this time of the month, of the year, will be raining. And you plan yourself. But as you say again, the weatherman is saying it was going to be raining up to May, and the other part of the country, which ideally also need to be receiving some rain, is not. It's the same. The issues are climate change is here. Erratic weather patterns are here with us. And it builds up, and maybe it will bring us to something else. Why? It's a global phenomenon, because it's not only us. What somebody else has done elsewhere is also affecting us. And that's why we have these conferences, global conferences, to deal with this climate change. We had COP26 in Glasgow, and we had COP27 in Sharm el-Sheikh, and we are now coming to have a COP28 in Dubai towards the end of the year. What are we talking about? We are talking about what you're doing in your country is affecting what I'm doing, what affecting us in this part of the world.
Whether you like it or not.
Whether you like it or not. So that's why it's a global thing. It's a global concern that needs to be addressed. Because it all sums up to the erratic weather conditions and patterns in the world. So then it leads us to something else. What are we supposed to do about it?
Yes. Now you've just oriented
we are
my
doing
next
our part,
question.
and we've yes, I don't know whether you're going to ask another question, but in our part we have a strategy as a country. The president is leading in that strategy of having 15 billion trees by 2032. That means it will take this country to 30% tree cover. Other countries have done the same. I mean, have done even better. They started early, maybe they realized a bit early, as it used to rain and we used to predict the timings of our rainfall and all that. It was still okay on this other part. That global phenomena, that climate change, erratic weather patterns had not actually affected this part of the world.
The African bloc.
Now it is with us.
Now, since we're on that climate change issue, let's just stick there for a moment, because over time we've talked about how we emit very little as far as this carbon emission is concerned. And you did touch on COP27, and I remember very well this was part of the issues that African leaders who were there were presenting. How then can first world countries finance the African bloc, given the fact that they had pledged to this? If my memory serves me correct, in terms of figures, about $80 billion annually. But even this pledge, they haven't honored it. Yet we still keep reeling with these issues. We agree, we also play our part, but not to the extent to which we suffer.
Others even want to run away from that commitment.
Oh yes, it even became an issue in COP27.
Yes, because fortunately the new president of the United States of America came in and he brought back the US to the table. Otherwise the former president was actually pulling out the US from the table because of that commitment. Now let me say this, and I'm sure somebody else will come to this station to address, because it's a whole topic that needs Kenyans to know and understand, because again it will affect us in one way or another. It will also help us, because you are looking at the carbon. I'm sure that it would be, the question is, the pollution elsewhere affects the climatic conditions here, right?
Yes.
Not necessarily that we've really polluted our environment so much. We've done our bit, yes. We need to do something about it. But somebody somewhere has maybe polluted more than us. So I don't know. That is the framework of carbon credit, right? It means, for instance, most of the developed countries are mass producers. In the process of production, right, you emit so much because there's burning and combustion for you to have this. Let me give you an example. Everything we have, and I'm sure we need to change that. We need to pollute a little bit. Everything comes from China, majorly China, India, and other developed countries, which are major producers, right? In the process of converting the raw materials into a finished product, until, for instance, you have a very nice car that I say, oh, I need to drive a Harrier, or I need to drive a Mercedes. That process of manufacturing process, until you get the finished product, fine product, has taken so much. And in the process of taking so much, it has taken so much of pollution, or rather emission, in the process of combustion in manufacturing process, right? Where does that emission goes to? Where does it go to? The gases emitted, where does it go? It goes to the environment, right? It goes to the atmosphere. what we share, we can share the physical boundaries here, but
the air,
and the global atmosphere is all of us. So when you pollute from China, pollute from Brazil, pollute from meat, let me say. I mean, that emission comes from various countries who are doing the serious production. It goes to the atmosphere. It affects us.
Whether you like it or not.
Whether you like it or not. And therefore, these arguments that these countries have not honored, those who are producing, the developed countries who have actually the mass production, who actually pollute more, they have not honored. What have they honored? Not honored. They are ought to have honored, giving us the resources that requires us to now mitigate climate change. How do we do it? We do it by, for us in Africa, planting trees, for instance, right? Because now we need to suck away that carbon that you've produced. We need to take away the carbon emission that is in the atmosphere. And how do we do it? The only process to do it is biological and geological. The biological way is afforestation and reforestation, right?
Plant more trees.
Plant more trees. What does trees do? Of course, the simple biology. If you learn in your grade 4 maybe, will tell you what the trees does.
What they take in and what they give out.
Yes, what they take in and what they give out. So they take away or they suck away the carbon dioxide, which are part of those gases from the atmosphere. And that's what it is termed as a carbon credit. I don't pollute here. You pollute so much. I have these trees here. So give me the resources. Where will the resources go? And again, as the First Lady, I think the agenda is how then can we tap into this carbon credit so that even the communities can actually benefit? Because they are the ones who plant these trees. You remember the green jobs that we are talking about, creation of the green jobs?
70,000?
These are the ones who are doing it. They are the ones again who are going to protect and conserve that environment.
I hear you.
So that blanket of the canopy of those trees, they are the ones who ought to benefit from that.
I hear you. So just allow
But then the framework is being developed. I'm sure the division of the climate change in the ministry is still working on that to break it down, make it simple, and then of course make it fair.
I hear you.
Because what happens sometimes, and probably you off the cuff, sometimes some two people somewhere sit over maybe a cup of tea or a glass of beer and say, I have this forest here and I need credit here. That is what used to happen before we get the knowledge that
just allow me to backtrack a bit before you continue, so that we can also get context in simpler terms. So when you say carbon credit in simpler terms, how are we defining it? What exactly is this? Just very simple.
I don't know how simple I can go, but let me make it this way. And that's why I said somebody from the climate change ought to come here and take you the whole day about that. In simple, for us, for the Kenyans to understand.
Yes.
Let me use a country X, and let that country X is assume which country pollutes more, right?
So you're saying country X pollutes more? Pollutes more.
It has this so much metric tons of CO2 in there, right? But you need so much canopy, right? Because we are looking at biological sequestration, carbon sequestration. Carbon capture, I need to suck that emission from the atmosphere. Because I don't pollute myself here.
No, country Y does not pollute as much.
Let's say country Y is Kenya.
Yes.
And country X is that country which produces
which country
so much.
This is?
I'm saying that country that right? Has so much. If you were to visualize, you say, yes, so much tons, metric tons of carbon and CO2 gases in the atmosphere. Here, and let me give you a very interesting example. When you, and this, I can say this on television. When you look at the sky now, you may not see the sky because there's a lot of clouds, right? Here in Kenya, where is it, right? But otherwise, when there was no rain, you could see the sky very clearly. You could see the plains
very clearly.
Clearly, right? In another country, for instance, China, I've been there more than twice. Any day, whether it rains or it doesn't rain, you will see something like clouds, right? But these are not clouds. These are just gases, pollution. You cannot see beyond 100 meters in that country. It tells you that's a serious country which produces so much, mass production. Therefore, it pollutes so much, right? So how do we then, and that it's not only limited to their space, it has moved all over. It is a global pollution. How do we then suck? How do we then capture that CO2 in the atmosphere? And that's why we are saying we plant trees. We take our country to 30, 40, even 50%, right? It gives us leeway to even access more credit of carbon, and that will be a lot of resources. Yeah.
So then what happens to this analogy of us looking at it as a country, a company or organization having the permit to produce a certain amount of these emissions, and even as you respond to that, then have these countries violated this so that then they produce so much more as they need to manufacture, because you also equally benefit from whatever that we import from these countries?
Yeah, I think we have various protocols, and that's why I say the next speaker would come here and give you this. We have various protocols in terms of agreements of how much developed countries are allowed to produce this, because we know you have an economy to run, right? An economy to run. That economy, which is we regard it as a developed economy, and we have our economy, which we are developing, right? We've not even reached our levels in terms of how much we are allowed to. Them, they've even gone beyond the levels of pollution that they are allowed to, right?
They've exceeded
They've exceeded. And that's the reason why the negotiation is bring now resources so that we can compensate this country. It's like saying we compensate you for the time being for not producing so much, but even as you don't produce so much, we still buy from you. And even as we buy from you, you gain economically, but you still pollute the same environment that we all share. Therefore, can you give us the resources, right, as we plan and wait to manufacture and produce, in the meantime, to that level, you can compensate for the pollution that you run. And this is a country that can do that. And as we do that, we keep on planting trees, for instance. We do reforestation and all that, and that is biological sequestration or capturing of carbon in the atmosphere.
So then we can fully agree that indeed they have exceeded.
Yes.
They have done more.
But the question is, they don't want to pay even that.
And that's what I want to find out. How then do we keep them accountable? What is there something we can do as an African bloc? Because truth be told, Professor, we are really honestly dealing with these adverse effects of climate change. And even as we talk about let's protect our water towers, as we're discussing, let's continue planting trees, but hey, it is still happening. Is there a framework we can use to perhaps make them get accountable to whatever they have pledged?
The leadership of the world are very interesting leadership. Remember I said the former president of the US was actually pulling
away from this
kind of discussion, right? Pulling away means what? It's like you don't want to pay, right?
So you just dealing with your own issues.
And say, now, and that was a bit, I don't know, it's complicated, because as you are asking a question, you can't put guns in people's heads and say, if you don't do this. We are saying there are things that people can do, and maybe at some point when we were kind of frustrated, people say, okay, maybe all of us can go pollute your own environment. Is that the way to go? We perish together. We'll keep on talking, and we hope that there'll be leaders who will be able to be answerable, people who will be responsible. And I'm sure the current president of the US has done so much, Biden. He brought on board a serious team. And I think during Sharm el-Sheikh, I think I attended a meeting with I accompanied my minister in the discussion where the framework of this carbon credit was being discussed. And other countries like Colombia, I think I remember the representative from Colombia, I think the minister from Colombia was saying, we are frustrated because everybody else is waiting for that framework, that global framework to be respected and then honored. You pay the money so that these other countries can do that. How else then can we, and let me take us back to the 5 billion trees by 2027 and 15 billion trees by 2032. I don't want to say it is not doable. It is doable, but we still need resources. We need serious discussion around that, and we need serious partners to give us resources. And one of the areas that we thought we are going to benefit from is, of course, the carbon credit facility. And again, as I told you, the president is very keen on this, and I think he's also keen, and very soon I think the framework will be on the table.
So now this informs why African leaders were really so big on ensuring that indeed this pledge by the first world countries is honored.
Absolutely.
Okay, I hear you. But also I just want to understand how we can leverage on these carbon credits, because while preparing for this, I actually did come across a study that was done in 2021. It indicated that about 15% of all carbon credits supplied in the 2 billion voluntary carbon markets were from Africa. So supplied 15% of this. So then how can we leverage on this so that we can also be able to perhaps produce more in caution, yes, but again to our advantage and benefit? Because truth be told, again, it's very easy to say that we need that framework that first world countries need to honor, but maybe may not come sooner. But we can't be living at a standstill as we're waiting for them to honor this. So then how can we also as a bloc
I think
leverage?
As I said, we're working on a framework. I think framework is almost on the table. I think a question you'd also asked is, has anybody gotten something from this carbon? Has anybody really gotten some money? How does it pay?
I wanted to get this before I come to that.
It's good money, yeah, because because of the same framework, and who needs and who qualifies, and where and all that. And you have some places. I don't know that you maybe Google later on. There's a community known as Mikoko Pamoja. I think in Kilifi, which I think they were given a check of 1 million shillings or 2 million shillings last year. These benefits have actually started coming in, right? But I think when we say we want the framework to be very clear, is to get our act together, so that there are also very interesting people outside there who comes in and say, I want to negotiate, I'm negotiating for this company, I'm working for this, let's sign an agreement, then we get it done, and then you get a credit, right? Now, I think we are now in the process when we are talking about the issues of the framework. Eventually we'll have a comprehensive carbon register, carbon credit register. And we are saying this community deals with this particular forest. For instance, say Kenya Water Towers Agency, we are custodians of, say, Loita Forest, for instance. It's a serious canopy of forest. And there's a way, and of course in the framework, there's a way of which you're going to measure how much carbon that particular forest can sequester, can capture, right? In that way, then computation then follows how much you paid for. And who then is going to be your client. Are you getting it?
I do.
So those are the things that we are being done now, so that when that framework is there, it's clear. We're also going to, eliminate some of the fraudsters who are going to negotiate. I said some sit somewhere and over a bottle of beer and discuss this issue and sign and say we've had this community and we've entered into an agreement and now we are going to pay you this. So that's how it is, and I think when that is clear, and I'm sure, as I said again, under the ministry, under the Department of Climate Change within the Ministry of Environment, these issues are going to be sorted very soon.
So indeed it does pay?
It will be very clear.
Okay.
And even payment now will be very clear.
It will be very clear. So indeed it does actually pay?
Yes.
It does pay, and it does pay well.
Yes.
So then one I said, then if this is the structure, indeed it does pay well, and the framework is being worked on, and everything's going to be clear, crystal clear, as we say. Does it expire?
There will be contracts again in that framework. There will be contracts, because when you pay something or you pay for something, it's for a period of time. It doesn't expire. It means probably maybe Mitsubishi company, which produces cars in Japan, for instance, will enter into a contract with you, right? And they'll be paying maybe $5 million within a period of 5 years to this particular community, which is this particular forest and all that, right?
Okay.
After that, maybe the figures will have also changed. The amount of you need to pay for a credit per ton will have also changed. So all that will be in that framework.
Okay, so that's why we need that framework in the first place.
Yes, it doesn't go indefinitely.
Yeah. All right, I hear you. And also I want us to look at issues of floods and just how does that come about, because it's so easy for us to keep saying oftentimes that indeed we have been having failed rain seasons, and we have reeled a lot with issues of drought. I mean, we have seen over time animals dying, livestock that is, Kenyans, people dying because of the issues of drought. But now the rains are here and we have floods. What is this disconnect? Is there a way that we can conserve this water, that it will be of benefit to a later time? And what practical way can we do this?
Okay.
Yeah.
Probably we need to start from what has gone wrong. Probably, right? And I'm sure also very soon you'll have time to probably interview somebody from National Water Harvesting Authority. Maybe you didn't know that we have that kind of
water harvest. I know the
Water Harvesting Authority.
Yes.
What do they do? When do they need to harvest such kind of water? But let me go back to my water towers.
Yes.
In the definition I gave you, there was an element of percolation and retention. What does it mean? Because you are supposed to trap the water from the precipitation so that the water can infiltrate into the topography which is qualified to be a water tower, right? In absence, what makes it not to retain water? All right?
Yeah.
So in absence of, or rather because of things that we've done, we've cleared the vegetation, right? We've been tilling the soils around that vegetation and all that.
Yeah.
We have actually impacted negatively on that particular water tower, which ideally ought to have captured, in simple terms, capture this water during the precipitation like this, right? This is rainfall. Another term for that is that precipitation. This is the process. Now, when it rains, the water goes down, we need to capture. Then the water sinks slowly, infiltrates into the soil, what I say percolation.
Yeah.
And then later on, discharge through those, the rivers and streams and all that. It doesn't happen anymore. What happens is, it rains now, and there will be something known as service runoff. All the water will run off from the service. If you, I mean, when it rains and you drive along any road here, you'll see a lot of water, you know. But again, this is a city. If you go to the village, wherever, it rains and you see a lot of water running. That's known as service runoff. Why? Because nothing is holding the water anymore. When we do the 5 billion trees and probably up to 15 billion trees, then we'll have improved retention of water in our soils in various topographies.
Okay.
That will reduce, right? And then if that reduces, we reduce the service runoff. What we are seeing is a menace of the service runoff. When it runs like that, it goes direct to the streams and it goes direct to the rivers and goes to the lakes. Finish. Within another 1 week, it's dry. We need to reverse that. And how are we going to do that? Planting trees again. So you see,
there's no mechanism except just greening our environment.
Because greening will hold the soil together. The trees will soak this water. It will stop the velocity of how the water is hitting the ground. All that.
Okay, I hear you. So you are saying greening is the only solution to this menace? Yes,
but then of course mechanically you're still dealing, and I'm sure somebody from the Water Harvesting Authority ought to come and discuss that, is then how? Because greening, yes, but even if we green today, if we start the process of growing trees, it will take us probably a period of 7-8 years, right?
Yes.
That is why we bring in also the element of bamboo.
Okay.
Because bamboo takes a very short time to grow and to hold the soil together, right? And it reaches majority within 5 years. Good enough.
Okay.
So those are tactics and techniques that we want to use. But then, of course, I was discussing with members of Mandera, where now they're anticipating a lot of rain. I mean, the rain is here, a lot of water is going, and they also feel now this is the right moment to tap the water. What are you going to do? And you've heard the president talking about serious dams.
That's what I wanted to ask, because then can we look into that as well? Because it talks about 100 mega dams.
Yes.
And of course, you've seen some of these dams already in the process of construction. For instance, the Thwake Dam, I think, is about 70% in terms of construction. Just the other time, he did open the Thiba Dam in Tharaka-Nithi. So there's, can this also be one of those avenues we can use to trap?
Those are part of the solutions, but you're looking in, now if you're looking at service runoff in other places like now Mandera, which ideally is not necessarily rivers, but you want to hold water which ideally needs to be flooding and going away. Can we build serious dams which will hold this water for a period of maybe 2 to 3 years? That will help.
Okay. So then we don't keep saying, yes, we don't have rain, it's drought, now we have rain, it's flood, and sometimes you really can't get the connection.
How can you hold this water for a period of time?
Just like the other time, in fact, even today on the papers, we are seeing floods sweeping away. Is it in areas of, where did I see that? In Sambu, in Kajiado?
Right, yes.
That county experiencing floods. In fact, children are even at home. So when you have no rain, they're at home because of drought, they can't get food. Now we are having rains, they're at home because of floods.
Absolutely.
And sometimes you really can't get the connection between these two scenarios. But again, also, there's another thing I want us to address before we, cede ground or we leave this particular set. And this is, again, one of those things that we are seeing the water CS, that is Alice Wahome do, this water sanitation and irrigation cabinet secretary. Just yesterday, she was in Kilifi County launching a 29-kilometer pipeline water project. And this was to deal with challenges of water, in that particular county. But one thing really, was my point of concentration, and that's why we keep saying oftentimes that public participation is good, because some residents in that county were saying that indeed this is a good project, what the ministry or what the government is doing is good, but also saying that this particular 29-kilometer pipeline is very far from where they live. So then can we also concentrate on water pans, for instance? How do you speak to this, and how easy and quick can this be, so that then we don't really just get into big, because millions of shillings what was being talked about for this particular kilometer, but then you realize it's going to serve perhaps a specific set, because for the other ones they're very far from where this is. How do you address these issues when it comes to dealing with these challenges of water?
I think, the context of that, I've not read it, but as you say, the minister.
From where you sit.
But from where I sit, I think there are things you've mentioned about. I think it builds up to the other question that we are talking about in Kajiado, I think.
Yes.
It has not been raining, and sometimes I sympathize with my friends. I have colleagues who work with me from that region.
In Kajiado? In
Kajiado region, generally, and it's not Kajiado alone. Kajiado all the way to Mandera, which they've not been seeing rainfall. Now it is raining too much in abundance, and people cannot go. And what can we do about that? Again, we mentioned that we need to do the you call them the water pans. If you think it qualifies to have a serious dams, that those ones can be done. That in the short period of time, it can address those issues. Now, coming to what the CS was doing, that is good. But then, of course, the network of that piping needs to be improved. But again, you said the water pans as well is something else that can also help communities, right? Rather than using maybe, I'm sure, I said again, I didn't, the context of that is probably it's a supply and distribution of clean water for drinking and all that. But again, for the livestock is something else that probably we need to, in that region, because, I think it is linked to the Tana Delta region. We need to do an improvement on the water pans, because ideally the economic activity of those people is, they're like, do I call them nomads? But the people also who have animals to feed livestock and all that. Technology also needs to come on board in these things that we are talking about. And I expect you to ask this question: what can we do? Because I would give you an example of a country that we are talking of water scarce country, as Kenya, but we are seeing a country which you don't see rain. I've been trained in that country. Israel is a country I'm talking about, and for a period I've been there twice for 3 months. You don't see. I've not seen rain there, but they'll tell you they have enough water from the Sea of Galilee for them to drink. But then you ask yourself, they export oranges and some cereals. where do they get the water for that?
Leverage on technology.
And technology. So technology is very, very crucial, whereby you can even clean the sewage system that we have. That's what they've done in that country, to a level that you can use the water clean from the sewage to irrigate. And that's what they've done. They do that, and they pump the water to a southern part of Israel known as the Negev Desert, and they produce the cereal. So technology is very, very crucial. They also use reverse osmosis, which of course we know it's a bit expensive, but then of course it uses more power. But then of course they have moved it to use solar, which is clean technology, clean energy, don't pollute. You require so much power, but you get it from solar, which is a clean energy, and therefore you eventually get the clean water from reverse osmosis, from water from the sea. So technology is something else.
I mean, we keep saying oftentimes that we are never short of ideas, good ideas. They are there, as you say. We only have a challenge of implementation. So I hope whatever we've discussed here can actually be implemented for the benefit of the Kenyan.
The discussion has started, and the president is taking the leadership.
Okay, I hear you. Professor Julius Tanui, the CEO Director General.
It means the same thing. The CEO is,
Okay. CEO Kenya Water Towers Agency has been my guest for the past 60 minutes, of course, just looking at where we are as a country as far as issues of climate change is concerned, what we can do to alleviate that issue, and also looking at water conservation as a whole in this week of climate change. Good place to end this conversation, but we also have an interesting discussion just coming away after this breather, so stick around for that.